when we see this pattern, there's something that needs to be considered very carefully. Many people repeat this idea that Yahawashai rose after the Shabath. This is why there are gatherings like sunrise services, waiting for the sun to rise. Well, it's a little bit off. It's close, but it's not what Yahawah designed. So it's not actually what Matthew 28 says. Matthew 28, 1-6 says something that is very specific.
Mathathyahawah 28, 1-6. But late in the Shabbat, as it was dawning into day one of the week, Paryam from Magdala and the other Paryam came to see the tomb. And see, there was a great earthquake, for a messenger of Yahawah came down out of heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his garments as white as snow. And the guards trembled for fear of him and became like dead men. And the messenger responding said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Yahawashai, who was impaled. He is not here, for he was raised, as he said. Come, see the place where the master lay."
All right. It says, he is not here. Well, if we back up, besides the guards, the guards just froze, man. They just froze up. They didn't know what was happening. But besides that, we look at these women, they came late in the Shabbat. So it was still the seventh day. And it says that it was drawing toward or dawning toward the first day. In other words, there was light, but the sun hadn't risen yet.
Yeah.
So the next day hadn't occurred yet. And when they arrived, that last verse tells us that the tomb was empty.
Mm-hmm.
That means what it's telling us that we know the resurrection occurred before the seventh day ended and before the first day began.
Started. Yep.
And it's also showing us something even deeper than that, because it's showing us that this was a discovery. So, and the discovery is this: but by this point, Yahawashai had already risen. So the emphasis is not after the Shabbat. What sunrise services, you guys have probably all attended these, a sunrise service, the church has a sunrise service, and they're waiting for that sun to come up. Well, it's not that. And that's why it's not after the Shabbat that he rose. It's not after the seventh day. It's not after that. But that's why we often note in scripture how the scripture emphasizes that each day begins with sunrise. Because here's the moment in time where that is so important, because that helps to confirm the rhythm, the pattern, knowing that the sun hadn't risen yet. And this scripture tells us that the sun hadn't risen yet, and it tells us that it's late in the Shabbat and it's dawning toward the first day. So it's telling us very clearly. And so the emphasis is, as the Shabbat was closing and the first day was approaching, the tomb was already empty. But why is it important? Something we've been saying on this Shabath assembly. It keeps the pattern and it keeps it precise, unchanging. The Shabath closes and the proof of resurrection is already there. The grave has already been broken open. Death has already been overcome. The women, they don't come to watch him rise. They come and find that he is no longer there. He's gone. And this matters from a Paryam Raashwan, first fruits. It matters because the resurrection and the first fruits pattern are inseparably linked. They go together. Paryam Raashwan is tied to the morrow after the Shabbat. That's why it's important to understand. It's important to understand when the day begins. It's important to understand how the week is laid out, when the first day of the week is, second day, third day, fourth day. It's important to understand that because it's all part of the pattern. And this is the day of presentation. It's the day of acknowledgement. It's the beginning of the count to Shabath. So we need to distinguish two things. Number one, the resurrection itself. By the close of the Shabbat, the tomb is already empty. Number two, the first fruits presentation and counting. So this is anchored in the morrow after the Shabbat. So very specific. The morrow after the Shabbat is the first day of the week, which is tomorrow. And literally today is the seventh day. Tomorrow is the first day as we sit here right now in this particular presence. So that distinction is important because the rising occurred and then the appointed pattern moves into open witness, presentation, and counting. I'm reemphasizing the counting piece because we're going to talk about that in a second. So the sequence is not confusion. It's actually order. Because what happens? The Shabath closes, or the Shabath is at the end, is closing. The tomb is already empty. The morrow is about to begin. The first fruits pattern is now openly revealed. And when the first fruits occurs, that first day of the week, the count to Shabath begins. This is why the timing is so powerful. The resurrection is not disconnected from first fruits. It's what actually gives it a living witness, because the first fruits is first accepted, then there's a first raised, and then there's a guarantee that more will follow. There's even more that happens after the resurrection. More will follow. And that is exactly what Yahawashai becomes in the pattern. Not merely one that's raised, but the first of the raised, the beginning of the harvest, the proof that the rest is coming. So when the women come, find the tomb empty, Scripture is showing us something greater than a moment. What it's showing us is that the pattern has been fulfilled. The first has already come forth, Yahawashai. And because the first has come forth, the harvest can't stop. It can't be stopped. The harvest is going to happen. They didn't come to see him rise. They came and found that he had already risen. By the close of Shabbat, the tomb was empty. And on the morrow, the first fruits witness stood in full alignment. Yahawashai, he stood in full alignment with prophecy. And scripture.
This is really exciting stuff. I do want to point out part of what the angel or messenger confirms in Luke's account in Luke 24, verse 7, that's referenced on the screen there. But he actually confirms that the third day is when he was going to rise. Whereas the one in Matthew just says he's already risen. This is the confirmation of the rhythms that we're talking about, because we know that day 4 is when he dies. We saw that in Luke 22:15. First day of unleavened bread is day 4 of the week. That's the day he dies. And he's going to rise on the third day. He prophesied that. Scripture has mentioned that. And then the angel comes in the picture and is like, yeah, just like he said, he was risen on day 3 in the grave, which is 3 + 4, 7. The seventh day, Shabbat.
Yeah.
So the rhythms, the order, the pattern, scripture is confirming it in more ways than one. And when we understand that this is in alignment with what Yahweh has established from the very get-go, when he says, hey, when I created these lights, it's for appointed times. In Genesis 1:14, he had the redemptive plan the entire time. And the appointed times is literally the witness of that well before it's taken place. And when it takes place, it's in the perfect order. So yeah, it's definitely amazing to just be able to see that and see how scripture is confirming and getting the clarity from, again, the stuff you talk about, like the sunrise services and people doing stuff on Sunday and just that confusion. It's like, no, we can see what scripture is making very, very clear, because it's been the order and the pattern of things since creation.
Since creation. Yeah.
I,
So, first fruits is something that, this is where the witness becomes clear. The first fruits of the raised being Yahawashai, not just first fruits of crops, but first fruits of life itself. This is what is shown to us. One was raised first, and that first represents what is coming after. So this is not just about agriculture. This is important. This is about resurrection. It's about order. It's about a guarantee. Because if the first had been raised, then the rest simply can't be held back. Everything has to continue to flow as it was meant to. So the first is proof, Yahawashai is proof that the harvest is real. And we're going to talk just a little bit more about, what this means, how we observe it. But when we look at Galawa, or Revelations 14:4, they were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Elohim and to the Lamb. First fruits. We're going to be first fruits as well. So the guarantee, this is what the guarantee is about. And just to be clear, why does it even matter? Because the first is not separate from the rest. So in other words, everything again is tied together when it comes to the feast. It is the assurance. It is, that the first is being accepted, that Yahawashai is being accepted, that the first fruits we present are being accepted, and that the outcome is already established. It's already set. And the rest of it is no longer a question. It's only a matter of time that we see everything play out. So this day is not small. This day is really a declaration of what has begun will be completed. What has been raised will be multiplied. This is why we pay attention to the first. And Ramium Romans 8:23 tells us we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit. So again, first fruits. This is where the order becomes real in our lives, because scripture is really clear. Nothing is taken until the first is given. And this means that no increase is truly yours until you acknowledge the source. And this is what first fruits is all about. It's acknowledging the source of our provision. But this is what challenges us, because the natural instinct of people is to take first and give later. But the pattern says give first and acknowledge first. That's the real pattern. That pattern is different from man's instinct. We have to honor first, then everything else follows. So the question becomes, do we truly recognize where our increase comes from? Or do we treat it like it came from ourselves? And that's where we run into a problem. So when we look at Proverbs, Mashalayim, esteem Yahawah with your goods and with the first fruits of all your increase. First fruits of all your increase. And this is an area that we can do it the right way, or we can do it the wrong way. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But tomorrow doesn't just mark a moment. It starts a process. And we see that in Deuteronomy 16:9. Count 7 weeks for yourself. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the grain. So talking about the harvest, talking about first fruits, talking about tomorrow, the first day of the week, and during this period of time, during unleavened bread. And it talks about counting 7 Shabaths, and that leads to the fullness of the completion of this particular appointed time cycle. And it just points us in that direction. When we look at Jubilees 6:17, it says, and he celebrated this festival in this month, 7 days, rejoicing before Yahawah, because he had given him joy in all his labors. How do we give him joy in our labors? By offering him first fruits. That's how we do that. So what do we actually do tomorrow? Literally, what do we actually do tomorrow? And making it simple. This is what we do. There's something we set apart, make it set apart first. So the interesting thing, and unless you guys have seen it somewhere, chime in, but there is no scripture that says that there's a set amount of the first. There's nothing commanded that says how much the first has to be. I know that from a church perspective, we've been taught, give 10%, but that's not what the scripture says. There is no set amount for the first. Nothing specific when it comes to giving first fruits. What it does is it intentionally identifies a first portion, and we decide. Each individual decides what that first portion is. Yahawashai or Yahawah doesn't designate that. We designate what we believe that first portion is. Not what's left over, however, the first portion. Not what's convenient, the first portion. We acknowledge, and this is how we do it. We acknowledge it, so we speak it. In other words, Yahweh, I'm giving this to you. In simple terms, I'm giving this first portion to you. We recognize it, or we recognize that this didn't come from me. It came from Yahweh. And then here's the key part. We release it. How do we do that? That means we don't hold on to it. We don't treat it as common. We don't allocate it to bills. We don't, allocate it to other obligations. We let it go. It's not ours anymore. And what do we let it go to? To a good cause, to do something that truly makes a difference. It's not meant to pay. And so this is the harsh reality. This is the truth. It's not meant to pay notes on buildings. It's not meant to pay salaries. It's not meant to pay utilities for organizations. And I think you guys know what I'm saying. It has a different purpose, because the first is not about keeping or giving to a religious entity. It's about honoring. And it's honoring the one who needs to be honored. And once that's done, everything else is set in order. Mashalayim, Proverbs 3:9, again, esteem Yahweh with your goods and the first fruits of all your increase. The first fruits of all your increase. So we're literally, if we put it in monetary terms, and we put it in a paycheck terms, if you will, just to make it simple, whatever that first portion is, you deem that you want to commit to a good cause. It could be to a nonprofit that you know is going to use that money for a specific thing. It may be someone that you know is homeless that you're going to give it to, someone who needs groceries, etc. It's going to go to a good cause, and you're going to know, you should know specifically what it's going toward. And when we give to a church organization, we don't know where it's going. I've been in leadership of churches, and I can tell you, it goes to all kinds of different places before it goes to the purpose you think it's going to. And there are big salaries. The building, the lights have to be kept on, etc. That's not what it's meant for. There's nothing in scriptures that tells us that's what it's meant for. It's meant to do something good that honors Yahweh. Consider this, that this is the pattern. And this pattern not only applies for tomorrow, it applies all the time. Because you look at it's Proverbs 3:9, esteem Yahweh, so glorify him with your goods and with the first fruits of all your increase. So this is something that continues. Tomorrow is very specific to this harvest period of time. It's also very specific to the resurrection of Yahawashai, right? But this is a pattern that we can apply all throughout the year. Part of that increase, I mentioned here, is the acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, we have to acknowledge where the increase comes from. We may like to pat ourselves on the back, we did this and that, but at the end of the day, an increase came from the Most High.
Right.
That's number one and foremost. We have to acknowledge where it comes from. We no longer are using it for our own pleasure, our own obligations, etc. And the best example that I have is monetary, because that's the number one thing that we are increased with today is monetary increase. So that's the important part. And that's a pattern that we can use all throughout the year. This week, tomorrow, is about the harvest. If you have already set aside first fruits from income and that type of thing, that'd be a time to do it. For us, knowing that there's a pattern of giving of our first fruits, and we make a determination what that is, how we give it, is a very important distinction. Again, you don't use it for anything else. I mean, it leaves. There are people who, they say, well, okay, I can acknowledge it, then I can set it aside, and then I can go back and grab it and use it to pay bills because I've already acknowledged it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's contradictory, because there's a release that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a first fruits, there's a release. We no longer should be using that for our own personal pleasure, gain, etc., obligations. It should go to something that's beneficial to someone else that gives Yahawah pleasure. This is what we're saying. That it's simple. That Yahawah is the source. It's not us. It's not me. I'm not the source. And so that's where the acknowledgement comes in. We're acknowledging him. Again, make note of these passages here. And then this is the pattern. This is what we're seeing throughout the spring appointed times. Deliverance is Pesach, cleansing is Mathathyahawah, raising is first fruits, Paryam Raashwan, and completion is Shabath. That's the pattern, and it doesn't change. The question is, are we in the pattern? As we make it personal, because what we're doing here is not just about teaching. This is about examination, and are we in the pattern? Am I in the pattern? Just making it personal. Not do I understand it? Not do you understand it, but not that you have heard it, but rather are you walking in it? That is the difference. Are you walking in it? Not just hearing it, understanding it, but actually walking in it. Are you walking in deliverance? Are you walking in cleansing? Are you prepared for what is being raised, Yahawashai? Because the pattern is not optional. It is the order of Yahawah. So this is the moment in this feast cycle that we examine, or if I make again personal, where I examine where I am in the process, and what needs to change so I can be fully aligned. The first has been raised, which is Yahawashai. And then it's because of that, the harvest is coming. This is not just a statement itself. It's really the guarantee. It's the pattern has already begun. The first has already been accepted. So the rest cannot be stopped. In other words, everything that Yahawah has planned out, his pattern, there's nothing that can stop it from happening. It will happen. It's a matter of not whether or not we're going to be in the pattern, if we're going to be part of it. That is the key. If anyone and every person has to make that decision, if they're going to be part of this pattern, this process. But here's where we need to understand something even deeper. And that is because this is the wilderness experience. Because not everyone who begins will finish. What we're entering after this, after the raising, after Paryam Raashwan, the first fruits, it's the journey. Not just the feast cycle, but a process. And that process is what we're about to walk into as an assembly. as a community. And it's the narrow path. And that's the teaching that we'll be on. Excuse me. That's the teaching that the overall theme that this assembly will focus on between now and the fall feast. And that theme is the narrow path from calling to kingdom. Because everything that we've seen in these spring appointed times is only the beginning. Passat, again, it showed us deliverance. Mathathyahawah showed us cleansing. Paryam Raashwan showed us first raised. The Shabath showed us completion of the beginning. So, but after that, the journey just simply continues. And the scripture reveals something very clear, that not in one place, but everywhere in scripture, it's revealed to us this way. It's revealed to us in Torah and the prophets and Yahawashai and Paul and Revelations, even in the revealed scrolls, the hidden witnesses, if you will, what's known as the Apocrypha. It's revealed in all of them. All are saying the same thing. This is not fragmented at all. This is one unified pattern. The same pattern we saw in Yahawashai is the same pattern we are about to walk. Deliverance. Then the wilderness. That's what we're getting ready to enter into. What happens in the wilderness? There's testing. There's separation. Then ultimately, there's inheritance. And this wilderness that we're entering into, this will basically separate the remnant from what the scriptures call the rebels. So there will be a separating of remnant and rebels. That pattern, that's the pattern that's been happening from the beginning. And here's the truth we must face. And it's a hard truth. Many begin the journey, but few finish it. Many begin the journey, but few finish it. Because the wilderness is not just a place. It's a proving ground. It's where identity is tested. It's where allegiance is revealed. It's everything hidden becomes exposed. This is where some are refined and others fall away, because the process was never designed to include everyone. It was designed to reveal. And that's something else that we've just never been taught. It's never meant to be once saved, always saved. It's a proving ground. It's not meant to include everyone. It's only meant to include, or it's designed to reveal the remnant. That's what it's all about. Everything we're doing for the appointed times, it's all about ultimately revealing the remnant. And this is why first fruits matter so much, because the first shows us the pattern that it works, the promise is real, and that the outcome is already established. But we still must walk it. Because what's ahead? What's ahead is there will be testing. Testing of provision, testing of truth, testing of authority. There will be deception, not once, but in waves. There will be pressure, even systems designed to control. Then the question is, who can survive? But scripture already told us, the remnant will not depend on the system. The remnant will be preserved. And in the end, everything comes down to this. Will your identity remain? And that's why it's so important for us to understand who we are as a people. Because will our identity remain or will it be removed? Because names are either preserved or blotted out. And only those who endure, those who overcome, those who remain aligned will receive the name, the authority, and the kingdom. So as we stand here today at Paryam Raashwan, coming up on tomorrow, at the moment where the first has been raised, sometime before sunrise tomorrow, we are not just looking back, we're looking forward, because this is the beginning of a journey that leads all the way to the kingdom. Again, many will begin, but only those who endure this pattern will be part of the harvest. The first has been raised. Now the question is, will you remain until completion? Because there will be those who will not make it to the harvest.